All right, good morning, everyone. Let's call the meeting to order. If I could get a motion for the June 1st, 2021 minutes.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right, so those are approved. At 9:01, like I said, this part always goes pretty quick. Just the discussion of the exam by BKD, Baker Tilly, and Taft. We're about $500,000 in legal fees into it. Does anybody have any updates on that?
I have none.
None.
Okay, seems about the same every single meeting. We're almost a year into it. I think I could have audited the entire city myself in that time period of time. So anyways, okay, let's move on. It's 9:01. Cheryl, you ready?
I think so.
All righty. Is Bill on the call, do you know?
Bill was gonna get online, he had something come up at work.
Okay.
He was not able to be in person.
Okay. Bill, can you hear us? I don't know if you can unmute your phone. Bill Anderson?
There was not a Teams meeting sent out for this, so I had to quickly make one.
Okay. Just in case he has if Bill has questions or needs to respond. In the meantime, Cheryl, go ahead and start. Yeah.
Okay. As you've said, I'm Cheryl Sollers. I'm the Executive Director of the Westfield, Washington Public Library. And thank you for allowing me to discuss the new library project with you. Starting back in 2016, 2017, with the announcement of the Grand Millennium PUD, the Library Board, and the Westfield, Washington Township taxing entities, which included city council members, the mayor, school superintendent, and township trustee, have been exploring a possible multi-building campus. Multiple meetings occurred to explore this project. I represented the library at these meetings. The city pulled out of the talks, deciding it wasn't the right time for them. The township, the Westfield, Washington schools, and the library continued the discussion. A property was determined to meet all needs for all entities. This property was discussed with the library board, and Westfield, Washington schools was engaged in an intent to purchase the contract with the landowner. And I don't know if I need to, I don't think so. No, not yet. That's okay. I was questioning my thoughts. It was engaged in intent to purchase the contract with the landowner and moved forward with determining the viability to develop. This process revealed costs to develop were too high due to drainage issues. Westfield, Washington schools was on a tight timeline and decided to move forward on their own with developing land they own next to the Monon Trail Elementary School. Westfield, Washington schools offered up an opportunity to partner with them at the Monon Trail location. The library board discussed this, and it was decided to further explore a standalone library. We continued to work with Westfield, Washington schools and all government entities in Westfield, Washington Township on what would be most beneficial for the taxpayer. Because we've been having ongoing discussions with all units, we feel that now is the perfect time for the new library. The Westfield, Washington schools decreasing its tax rate, the library's rate increases only by 2.4 cents. It will be a tax-neutral project for taxpayers at the property tax caps, and a decrease to those who have not yet reached those caps. I will now explain this in more detail. We have been working with Baker Tilly and Mike Reuter, our financial consultant, and we would like to show an illustrative analysis of the tax impact and circuit breaker impact. We have consulted with Westfield, Washington schools and based our process on the fact that they will be reducing their rate in 2022 as our new debt comes on. So the next slide, please. This is a chart of the library's existing debt service payments. And then the next page. And this is the calculation of the general obligation bonding capacity of the library. And then the next page is a summary of the proposed financing, which is a maximum of a $16.725 million bond over 20 years with an interest rate of $335,958. And then the estimated maximum annual debt service payment of $1,582,063, if my eyes are working right. And that brings us to a 2.04 cent tax rate. Oh, there we go. And I have also paper copies of this for you. So, okay. And then the next page. So this is a summary of the tax payments. This assumes a current market interest rate plus 1. So 2.15% through 3.8%. Right, so that would make the current rates 1.15 to 2.8, is that correct?
So I'm Ryan Fetters with Baker Tilly.
Okay.
We're serving as municipal advisor, and so these are estimates, and what she's shown you in terms of the previous slides too with the summary, those are on what we think the high side, okay? That's the current market rate she's talking about, plus 1%. Now, every day the market changes, okay? So bond selling now, I would say will be under 2% probably for a 20-year bond, and we're looking at something closer to about 16 years here. So I don't have a crystal ball, but yeah, I think we're gonna probably sell, it could very well be under 2%. But we have built that in, an extra 1% into these numbers, so these numbers are higher. Except for the maximum amount, the borrowing amount, the 16.725 million is the actual borrowing amount on this.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes,
Any other questions on this slide?
no.
Okay. So this is the summary of the annual taxpayer impact. So as you can see in the first column is the increase, or I'm sorry, the second column. First column is the net assessed value of the homesteads. Then the second column is what the impact would be with just the library rate. So someone whose gross assessed value homestead of $150,000 would be taxed on the 65,250, and then their rate would, or their tax would be would increase by $13.31 annually.
Is it all right if I go?
Please.
Go ahead and explain some of this stuff, because I think it might be helpful if I
Yeah.
give some context to this.
Okay.
She's doing a great job. But I know that there's questions I'm gonna be answering in anyway.
Okay.
So what this is we're showing an illustrative annual tax bill impact, okay? And so as Cheryl mentioned, there's two parts to the story. We have a situation where the library wants to do this project at the $16,725,000. That's an increase, and we're talking about an isolating here only for the debt service tax rate, okay? So what's been a part of the conversation is the school, as I understand it, is anticipating that their debt service tax rate is gonna drop by about it's up here, the 7.36 cents up there under the far right column.
Mhm.
So while the library is gonna have a 2.04 increase, and that's what these are showing. So what this is on the left-hand side, we have different values of property, different property owners. The homestead or the homeowners, that's their primary residence, okay? And so they're not taxed on those values. Those are the values of the 150,000 through the 500,000. That's what you could buy or sell a home for. But the taxable value is really the next column, the net assessed valuation, and that's what, that's after the deductions are applied.
Right.
So as she was explaining, that median, if we take the median home value that we have as the $281,700, they're only taxed on about $151,000. And for the library's project, it would increase the debt service rate from where they are, which is just under a cent right now, up to, they would increase it by 2.04. And so that home would have an increase of about $30.77, but with a corresponding decrease, and this is the narrative with the school corporation, they're having a reduction of about $111 on that same property. This is just for the debt service, okay? And so if we go, and then we have the other types of property here, but this is how this schedule works, okay? And what's more important is really the next slide, which is the the net of that. So, this is where it gets a little more complicated and why I wanted to come up here, is it looks complicated. It's not as complicated as what I guess I said it is. This is the net, okay? So the difference between the two is about 5 cents. So it's really a 5-cent reduction in the debt service tax rates. And what we have here, it's the same property values there with the homesteads and the agricultural and the commercial property. But we have 2 columns for each of the 2 different taxing districts that comprise the library district. Because really what's going to happen is overall, in terms of debt service, there's a reduction in the tax rate, okay, in this narrative. Whether or not you're going to see a reduction in your tax bill with the overall, we'll call it 5, I think it's 5.36 cents, you're either going to have a reduction in your tax bill or a reduction in the circuit breaker credits that your property has been generated, depending on the property owner's proximity to the tax cap. So I'm going to explain what that means. So if you, as a property owner, are at the tax cap, with this project, you're likely, when we're talking debt service, not to see a reduction in your tax bill because of this project, but the number or the value of the circuit breaker credits that are generated, those losses, would be reduced.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll see in one case on the Westfield City taxing district, you've got the first column, it says $34.71. That's the reduction of that tax bill because the $150,000 homeowner is not at the tax caps in the city, okay?
Yeah.
But below that, all those other houses, they're at the tax caps.
Yeah, you're still saying they're still below the circuit breaker, so
Yep.
it really doesn't matter.
Yep,
Yeah,
they're not gonna see a reduction.
right,
You guys are all got, oh, fantastic.
okay.
Yeah.
Are these callable?
They
bonds?
would be callable, yeah, so, and are you guys all familiar with what that means? They'd be callable, but only once you get close to the call date.
Yeah,
So if it's like a 10-year call, then that's what I assume this would be, is a 10-year call.
that's what I was gonna ask, okay.
Yeah, so, and we really do that based, and what that's, the determination on that is based upon what's going on with the market. So if there's better interest rates in the market, if we can build in a sooner call, we can do that, maybe an 8-year call, but really we want to look and see what the impact is on the total interest for the library's bonds.
Okay.
Yeah, so. Well, if this all makes sense, I don't need to go through all of that, but, yeah, so basically, it's either you have a reduction in your tax bill, or there's a reduction in the circuit breakers, which, as you are familiar, are gonna be going to all of the units, which would be the library, the county, the township, and so it would be a reduction there. So the next slide, I think, it's the next slide, let's see here, gets into this. This is the important piece of information. Oops, sorry. Oh, I'm not controlling it. I'm so used to controlling all these things on Zoom and making a mistake. So what this is here is we've taken a look at all the units that provide service to the jurisdiction. And so where it says baseline circuit breaker tax credits, those are the actual estimates we have from the DLGF for this year. So the library is at about $159,000, and the city, you're down there at 3.8, we'll call it $3.8 million a circuit breaker. What we're showing is, with the illustrative change from 21 to 22, with this project, and with the reduction of the circuit breaker, or excuse me, a reduction of the tax rate that we're talking about on the debt service, this is only looking at the debt service, we would anticipate you having a reduction of about $190,000, $191,000 in circuit breaker with this project. And in fact, this is actually based on our folks, with the help of our folks over policy analytics. And so this actually takes into account more than just the debt service, it takes into account levy growth. So for the operating or general fund, so there is some levy growth assumptions in here. It's not just isolated for the debt service, but this is what is anticipated overall with the
Okay,
reduction.
that's a good point. So that's one of the questions I was gonna ask you. I don't know the answer to this. So so as the community continues to grow, and, you know, let's say we have, 40% more homes,
Yep,
I mean,
that's a great point.
yeah, what is the growth assumption in this?
So let's go back, that's a great point, and let's go back to the schedule where we have the graphs. Yep, right there. So I think it's hiding it down there. I think we're using a 3.72% average rate of growth. It's in footnote 2 down
Oh, I see
there.
it. Okay,
So I know that this is part with our partners. It's not 3.72 every year that we've used in this, but overall the average is 3.72, which we think is very conservative for
Right.
where you've been. So that's why what you see here, and why I wanted to say a few more things, is we're showing an increasing debt structure. So each year, we're showing that we're increasing the debt service for the, up to the first 10 years. Then we flatline it, but that's because we're trying to capture some of that growth. So, and that's why this is based on 3.72, and I think you're somewhere around 8 or 9. I don't have that off. I know Mike Reuter has that information. But that's what you've kind of seen historically.
Okay.
So, again, 3.72% annual rate of growth up through 2030, where we then flatline the growth assumption there. And the target tax rate's that 2.95 cents, so somewhere between 2.95 and 3 cents. And what's nice about this, and the fact that the tax base is so large, we're able to, and the fact that you can pay bonds out to 20 years, the goal here is to maximize, or to maximize the benefit to the taxpayer by keeping the tax rate as low as we can. And we're targeting that 2.95 cents, but means that we have the ability to stretch this out over 20 years if we needed to, depending on where interest rates are going to go. But right now, based on these conservative interest rate assumptions, we think it can be done in a 16-year bond and stay at that 2.95 cents overall debt service tax rate for the library.
Okay.
What other questions can I answer? Because I know I flew through that pretty quickly.
That's good.
Yeah, but overall, the takeaway here is the project they'd like to accomplish should be, roughly a 2.04 cent increase for the library's debt service rate. But the narrative is, in conjunction, as we understand it, with the school corporation, it's really 5.36 cent reduction. Overall, you're going to see most likely a reduction in the circuit breaker credits, which is taken away from all the governments. And then as you asked, as there are more homes, and not just those homes, but the value of those homes, whether there's more or not, as that tax base increases, the tax rate should go down. And that's really what the driver is of circuit breaker, is increasing tax rates.
Right.
So as long as we get that tax rate down, you should see fewer circuit breaker credits.
Bill, is Bill on now?
Yeah, Bill should be on there.
I mean, because this is a kind of a joint session with the school board, so I don't want to.
Oh, right.
Have you already presented this to the school board, or
We've been in discussions with them.
okay, because I didn't want to. I mean, do you have any questions? I mean, I don't want to.
So Cheryl did hold a joint meeting with all the overlapping entities about a month ago, I believe, to where myself and Chris Baldwin, at that time interim superintendent, we went and had discussion at that time as well. That's actually where we started the conversation. It'd be nice to probably have this discussion as well. Just to add one piece that I know that's out there is kind of what's going to happen to their current site. We have been in discussions that the district is planning on purchasing that building.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I had.
Yeah, actually, it's not approved yet, at our July meeting, we'll be taking a resolution for a transfer of ownership between the two buildings for appraised value. And so we'll pay the library the appraised value of the building, which we have had completed, lock all that in, and then transfer would not happen until everything's approved, project's completed, all those ducks are in a row farther down the road.
Okay.
But it would start that process and tie us up to where we are working on that.
Okay. So one of the assumptions on here is that, I mean, if we just talk about this, is that the school's tax rate is going to decline. It's very unusual that anybody ever has a decline in tax rate. Everybody likes to keep their tax rate, up to the highest point. And there's been discussion, at least from what I'm understanding, as possible referendums as well. So, which would then increase
Yeah.
the taxes potentially.
So if we look at everything as it is today, so we have the capital referendum, operating referendum, where our tax rate is today. What we do know is over the last 3 years, our tax rate has steadily decreased. Our levy is actually the exact same, if not a little lower than it's been over the last 3 years. So we have not changed our actual operating budget in 3 years. As we look to the future and look at our future projects that may come on down the road, we have all that planned out pretty much through 2040. Our tax rate is going to continue to decline. It's not going to decline at the same rapid rate it has the last 3 years, but the projections we have been working together to give them those numbers. So we do expect our tax rate still to decline. Kind of back to, there is assumptions based on assessed value in there. We also work with policy analytics.
Yep.
We have them constantly update upon, we look more at 6-year timeline, and then we go super conservative, 3 to 1% after that. Average growth for Westfield the last 3-4 years for the city and school has been about 10 to 9%. on average AV. Our projections moving forward are 7 for the next few years, and then we do drop to 3 and 2. So we feel like we're fairly conservative in those projections as well, because that could clearly skew the number quickly
Right.
if that were to fall off. Referendum-wise, our operating referendum is up on, in 2023. We are having discussions with the board and working through that. There will probably be a question to renew that, but it will not be at the same 20-cent tax rate. It would be lower. I do not know how much lower at that time. I'm not going to give a number on that,
Yeah.
but it will be lower, so we know that's going to decrease as well as we look forward.
Okay.
So, yes, we do, like, the assumption that the school's tax rate is going to continue to decline is true. Verify that. Totally agree with that information.
Okay. Okay.
So in short, the numbers that were on that slide have your endorsement. They have your stamp of approval that there's nothing there that jumps out at you.
Yeah, no, I feel comfortable with those. As I always tell Cheryl when we go through these, is that's a projection looking into the future with a
Sure.
lot of different factors.
Understand.
So to say we're going to drop 7 cents, I'm not going to sit here and promise it's going to be 7.36 cents, but it will be a decline from where we are today, yes. And I do firmly believe will be further of decline than 2-cent increase that she will see.
Okay.
Appreciate that information.
Yep.
Thank you. Joe, you got anything?
Guys
Thank
good?
you, Cheryl. That was awesome.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Easy, right?
Thank you.
Okay,
Sure
thank
thing.
you.
Thank you.
Just, I just want to draw our attention real quick for the accounting for revenues, Graham Park. One of the things that I would like to recommend, and this is based on information that we've received that's been sent to me, is that the breakout of how we're accounting for the revenues that we're receiving from the Championship Park versus Graham Park, hotel revenues and that sort of thing. I know there is a county group or whatever or we have certain things on hotels, but I think there can be possibly maybe a better reconciliation of how we do that and how we see that as a council. So that'll probably be something that we establish different codes for the revenue impact, so we can track those things individually as opposed to everything being lumped in. So, I don't know if you have any.
I would just, we've got, I'm sure, sorry, it wasn't Cindy online. I forget who was online. Kim. There's no issue with setting up different classifications like that, as Troy had mentioned, correct?
I don't believe so.
I think we'd have to do it through a resolution, but I'm not really sure on that.
Right.
So
Yes.
that doesn't create any undue burden on your end, correct?
It's a little extra work, but I mean, it can easily be done.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. Chris Wilkes, you ready? All righty. So now we're going to discuss the North Point with Chris Wilkes regarding the tax abatement request.
I'm on there.
I didn't even ask you if you're presenting or if we're just going to do more of a question, discussion. or-
I'll happy to do both. Well, I'll begin with a little, I guess I have prepared something here. We can use that to guide the conversation. But again, for the record, my name is Chris Wilkes with Holiday Properties. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you this morning. Are you controlling or?
You can use the arrows, right?
Okay, right here. I got the wrong arrow. Ah,
You say slide down.
okay. As you might recall, I made a council introduction for this abatement request on May 14th, and this is the presentation, this is the first slide, so I just want to remind us a little bit of what and how we got here. As I mentioned on the May 14th introduction, you know, the history of North Point, we've had, as we've called them, you know, 3 really big wins out there. And for a park that's had pretty strained infrastructure, I mean, the road, East Street, is literally just being finished now. So it's actually kind of amazing we've been able to track those 3 that we did, which was the Bastion Toyota project, the Gordon Food Service and the Abbott Labs. And so, and a lot of those projects alone consumed a lot of energy and resources from our part, city leadership as well, and very proud of those. But as we, to put it in perspective, as we started thinking about it, about the last 12 to 18 months, one thing became very apparent, is that while those three are certainly important, we really feel like we're missing the vast majority of the market up here. And put this in perspective, those three that we secured over the last 3 or 4 years, okay, good wins in their own right. In the last 12 to 18 months, we can point to at least 6 companies in that 80 to 100 to 120,000 square feet neighborhood who approached us about expanding, moving into Westfield, in one case, remaining in Westfield. And in each case, they're smaller users, smaller businesses, but they don't have the benefit of the time. And so that's what I wanted to say. There's really, the businesses that are finding North Point as a location really fall into 2 categories. Companies that have the benefit of the time, the Abbotts, the Gordons, the Toyotas, and those that simply don't, okay? And what we are aiming to do with North Point is position the park and position the city to aggressively go at both of those 2 types of users. And so to pursue the tenants that don't have the benefit of the time, what we would like to do is put up 3 buildings. We call it North Point 1, North Point 2, and North Point 3. The 3 of those buildings total a combined 333,000 square feet. Each are different in size, configuration, so we think that they attack different segments of the market. And what other things too, these sites I won't bore you with the details, but they are limited by infrastructure, property lines, in this case 202nd Street, that still, while that road will go away, still has some utilities and so forth. So those sites are really what they are, okay? So those buildings, those sites are totally maxed out. And so, but we do have, and it's important to note, that we have 55 acres up here. We have about 30 acres here. We have another 14 here. We have plenty of land reserved to accommodate those big projects, those projects that have the benefit of the time. In fact, we have one project that's approached us here recently that would fall into that category of these big 3, okay? So this is not a zero-sum game, I want to emphasize. So it's not like we're taking our last 3 parcels at North Point and going in with this speculative investment, okay? So that's the point. We can achieve both. Could you, the slide, please? So as the Finance Committee, let's get into the finances. As I mentioned, 333,000 square feet between the 3. When we put this, all 3 of these buildings are estimated to cost about $25 million. We, at a 75% of hard cost, which has been consistent with what we've seen here and elsewhere, we're projecting an AV about $18 million. Using a current tax rate of 2.56%, those taxes fully assessed at $18 million will be $483,000 when the abatement burns off. So you can see here in year 11, that 483 is fully on board now. It's important to note that these 3 parcels right now, the 2020 paid 2021 taxes, combined, they're $4,700.
Right.
So what the city will get in return for these 3 buildings, it's just, the taxes will be assessed on this 10-year schedule, but over 10 years, you'll see, the city will see 2.6, or actually over the next 11 years, fully assessed, we'll see 2.6 million. Backing off that year 11, you'd see about 2.2 million even during the 10-year abatement. Okay, that is a given. Okay, so that is what we are asking to be recognized. A little bit, next slide here, please. The ordinance has, since we introduced it on May 14th, it has evolved a little bit through discussions and very good discussions. You might recall Councilor Spoljarek recognized, which is true, the North Point 3 building sits in a part of North Point where the PUD allows both LB and GB.
Right.
So the ordinance has been amended, or the resolution has been amended to specifically prohibit any benefit of the abatement going to any LB tenant. I don't think it's likely that an LB type user will find a home in that building, but in the event it does, the abatement is not offered, okay?
Yeah.
The other amendment that's currently in the resolution, which I actually think has been a really, really positive change, and I appreciate Councilor Patton, you and I discussing this, we called it the net new element. So one of the observations that was made was, okay, you build the 90,000 square foot, in this case, say North Point 2, what happens if a business that might be in North Point or Westfield now in another business park just says, hey, I can just slide up to North Point, take my 96,000 square feet and not bring another new job or whatever, and just get the benefit of lower taxes. That would have been a fair and possibility as the ordinance was introduced on May 14th. But we've added language that actually prohibits, well, it would only offer the benefit on the net new.
Net new.
So in this case, use an example of a Westfield user or a business that had 30,000 square feet and came up and located in 60,000. The abatement would be offered on the net new, in other words, the 30,000 square feet, which I think is a wonderful addition because as I thought about it, even from a developer perspective, if I had invested in that building that had the 30,000 square feet tenant, I wouldn't be terribly thrilled if that tenant just moved up the street for the benefit of the abatement that was offered by my city council. So I think that was
Yeah,
really,
it's a
really
win.
good.
It's a win for the developers.
Yeah, exactly, right. So
Yeah.
it's actually really, and I think it's a wonderful, I don't know if you call it precedent or guidance for when we do these in the future. So I
Right.
think that was a wonderful addition. The third thing that we've introduced here, there was some concern offered last week about the fact that these were speculative buildings and what kind of employment would be ultimately in these buildings. So we went back and we looked at the abatements that were offered to these big three back in the, so we pulled the public records for Bastion, Abbott, and Browning. And it's important to note that in each case, this is Bastion, they had an average salary of 60,000. Abbott was 52, Browning was 59, Browning Chapman. Gordon was such a big user, it was somewhat hard to even equate them for a moment. But the average salary per hour was $26 for those three, okay? So what we thought we would do is introduce into the ordinance for these three buildings a job target, okay, that looked very similar to what was already or what had been previously supported. So in this case, we would put into the ordinance that in these buildings, this would be building 1 would be 46 jobs. We've used $23 an hour, which is the county average right now, okay? And we use that $23 across all of the buildings. And so every year, we will have to submit to the council compliance reports that says, how are we doing on these three buildings, okay? And if we're short a job count or if we're short a wage count,
There's no
under
abatement. There's no abatement.
well, yeah, under Indiana statute, the council has the ability to terminate the abatement, okay? Now,
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
so if the building's empty, you build it, and nobody's in there.
Yeah.
There's technically no abatement.
well, yeah, because what we would do is at the end of year 1, when they said, well, Holiday, how you doing? We'd say, well, we have 0 jobs and so
Yeah.
forth, 0 wages. We can't get the building to lease. We're not happy about it. And now we're facing a prospect of the abatement being terminated, so our day is getting even worse.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's
So,
that's a positive for the city, right, Chris? Because at that point, I mean, yeah, the city's not participating in speculative investment.
yeah, exactly, right.
I might raise, not raise a question, raise a point. I'm probably the one that pulled this out, but I went back and read after I talked to Chris about speculative investment and how does this apply to Indiana cities. And I looked at 3 cities, Jasper, Columbus, and Franklin, which have similar highway characteristics to this one. Jasper does no speculative investment. They have quite an elaborate point system to determine whether they're even gonna do it or not. Columbus is kind of back and forth. They can do it if they choose to. Franklin does it, speculative investment, but it's really not speculative because Freightliner and these people that develop along 65 have a workforce already coming in there. So they kind of know what's coming, even if it is built by somebody else and owned by somebody else and leased to Freightliner, or whoever the trucking company is. So it's kind of across the board, back and forth. But I think Chris has made a pretty good offer here to fill in the other half. You know, half of it's employment and half of it's the size of the building. And this is what we had talked about before, really. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the offer.
So I think the ordinance has gotten better as we've moved through, and I appreciate the discussions that we've had. So we're very comfortable. We feel like this strikes the right balance, as we were talking about. How do we get 3 buildings? You know, what we would like to do is put 3, and that should be noted too. You know, oftentimes a developer will come in seeking to build 1 spec building. We're actually, you know, we have a lot invested in North Point. We're fans of North Point. We're fans of Westfield. We feel, you know, our company is willing to make a bet on 3 buildings, okay? We would just like some help and support in making that bet, that $25 million bet. But that said, we understand the concerns that have been raised on both the zoning, the net new, and now employment. And we're comfortable that I think we've met those concerns, and we're prepared to move forward on these 3. And and we know when those 3 buildings are delivered, we think we'll lease them up. We think we'll be successful. Time will tell.
Right.
But from the city's perspective and from a finance committee's perspective, your worst day is you're going to see $2.6 million, $2.8 million generated over the next 10 years.
Right.
I only wish I could have that same guarantee on the private sector side, but, you know, that's okay. That's what we do, so. I don't know if I have anything, no, those were just the holdovers from the
Right.
previous, so you can go back.
Scott, you have any questions?
No, I appreciate the work you've put in there, and I like the addition for sure.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So,
Okay,
anything else?
Chris,
No.
awesome.
Okay, great.
I appreciate you doing
Yes,
this.
yeah, great. Thank you,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right. Okay. Anybody else? Any comments? Anything else?
I just say we've got the Audit Committee to appoint. We will need to bring recommendations to the City Council for appointment to the Audit Committee. And I need to work with, with the mayor to find out who he wants as the independent resource person for city finances. I think this person is a person who can answer questions of the auditor.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anybody new. It can,
Yeah.
oftentimes, even internal audit functions, which is really what it is, just someone who has knowledge of the
Right.
whereabouts of the information. And in this case, even though he may not want to do it, I mean, the clerk treasurer has that information. It's really pretty simple.
Yeah. And the other one is the mayor's appointment, and I'll work with him to try to get that going. But the city council has 2 appointments, the mayor has 1, and he also names the independent resource person to
Right,
do that, so.
okay. Okay,
Sounds good.
Good.
I have nothing more to add. A lot of good information today.
Oh, by the way,
Appreciate
as I talked to Mr. Caldwell with a lengthy discussion, the 2020 audit is set up to happen by a firm.
right,
So it'll be done pretty much the same way, but it'll be done by an independent auditing firm that the state is picking up the difference between the cost that we would pay the state or we would pay an independent firm. So this first year, the state will be picking up that cost. After that, it's on us.
Okay.
So.
Perfect.
all right, thank you, everyone, meeting's adjourned.